defeat has been predestined. It is written in the sands. Who are you? That our one.
Too soon. I need more time.
Hello, I wanted to share with you my build that I played throughout the entirety of 0.3 that has not seen a single nerf going into 0.4. I know it might sound as a shocker, but it's a Spark Bloodmage. And you might be thinking, wow, what a unique build. But you see, I wasn't like the other Blood Mages. I didn't stack health, I didn't use a Wrathpith, I didn't use Bloodletting, and I did not depend on the Undying Hate Jewel, which, if you haven't seen the patch notes, are all getting nerfed. The Jewel and the Focus especially getting the GGG special triple tap nerf, making the items basically unusable. So what is this build exactly? During 0.2, a content creator by the name of I'm Just Anthony made a pretty cool Blood Mage Spark during a league that was primarily dominated by Lightning Spear. And it inspired me to adapt that build variant to suit group play, which is what I primarily focus on. Now, the reason I picked this build in particular is its compatibility with Waystone modifiers. During 0.3, there has been a change that made each modifier give specific bonuses, and this is important because the most difficult modifier for Blood Mages was reduced life and energy shield recovery rate. And funny enough, this modifier was attached to item rarity, making it present on almost every single Waystone that was hit with a chaotic rarity omen. Especially in group play, where this would get scaled to 75%, it made it very annoying to regenerate life, which is how all the health stacking builds functioned. My build uses a Ziri's Acuity, which are unique gloves that make life leech from critical hits instant, and synergizes that with a passive node called Fast Metabolism. These two in combination create a great way to sustain life that is not affected by life recovery rate. My DPS was not dependent on Bloodletting or Wrathpith because of my small health pool. I had to keep my spell cost as low as possible. We simply used a focus, and the main star of the show was cast on crit shooting out arcs. Buffed arc is very solid for clear and pretty decent when it comes to single target DPS because of the triple damage with lightning infusions, which are getting buffed, but the magnitude of shock that arc inflicts is slightly getting nerfed, but it's very negligible. When it comes to the build budget, it is on the higher side. This build gets really expensive, especially at the higher end, but you can get it online pretty early on in the league. And for a decently cheap price, it's just a very high ceiling and you can put a lot of currency into this build. I ended up having around 5 mirrors worth of gear, but even without this crazy high budget, it's a very well-performing build. And without further ado, let's jump into some live showcase of the items that you should be looking out for if you do want to try this build. Now keep in mind, this is going to be pretty expensive gear that I am currently wearing, but I'll try to just showcase the importance of every single piece and all of the modifiers. And then also show another variation of this build that uses a temporalis if you wanna move really fast, which is the solo play build that I used for carries. For your weapon, you can either use a staff or a wand and a focus. Since staffs are getting buffed next league, it might actually turn out to be more DPS than a wand and a focus, so that is something you should keep, a lookout for. But when it comes to my wand, it wasn't perfect. Ideally, you would replace one of the prefixes with spell damage and have double damages extra. And for your suffixes, you would probably want to replace lightning spells specifically with plus to all spells. It adds a lot more variety to the build. It's more versatile. You can use Comet on your cast on crit instead of Arc, and maybe try out a lot of other skills. But the other two suffixes are locked in. Crit chance and cast speed are mandatory. If you do choose a wand, the focus kind of follows the same story. You're just looking for cast speed, crit chance, plus to all spells, and as much damage as you can. Amulet, you're also just getting more level to spells. I went with Energy Shield for the tanky variant of the build, but you can also choose to go with a gold amulet and some rarity if you are a solo player and you do not, you kind of do value that rarity. You can go with a life variant with a gold amulet. Even though you don't stack life, it's kind of nice because it's harder to get Energy Shield on a temporalis. And Spirit is kind of needed if you do want to be that temporalis variant. Now, for your rings, I went with a Seed of Cataclysm. Honestly, you can use whatever rings you like. For solo play, I also had a gold ring and 1 Seed of the Cataclysm. For group play, I had 2 seeds. It is really your personal preference. It's just that Seed gives you so much crit chance, which is kind of difficult to cap without, using at least 1. But you're just gonna have to min-max your build and see whatever you have available to you. When it comes to corruptions on your seeds, overrolled seeds are slightly worse than increased damage enchantment corrupt. So you're ideally looking for increased damage or crit damage bonus. If you're a solo player, rarity, or if you're having issues capping out your elemental resistance, you can also just get an elemental resistance corrupt. For your helmet, boots, and body, you're just looking for as much energy shield as possible and as much resistance as possible. Now, belt is where this gets a little bit more interesting. We're stacking all this energy shield, but how exactly are we going to regenerate it? Investing into energy shield regeneration rate and the start of energy shield regeneration is kind of a big investment for a build that doesn't really rely on that energy shield and uses life as its main resource. That's where this belt and the Undying Hate comes into effect. I have custom crafted this belt to have a modifier that increases my life regeneration rate during any flask effect, which is an abyssal modifier, and just has a, resistance and extra life. Now this is extremely strong with the jewel because while I'm not dependent on the regen, my energy shield is, and in combination with Zealot's Oath, I'm able to regenerate my energy shield quite effectively actually. I can generate 10,000 energy shield in about a second whenever I am, in the middle of a monster pack. We won't have this next patch, so what do we do exactly? And the way to solve this issue, hopefully, will be a new unique that we're going to be using called Soul Tether. There is going to be a new league mechanic that allows for acquisition of a new currency that allows us to remove a line of text from a unique item and replace it with a different one. Now, we don't know the mod pool of the available, mods that it could replace it with, but we want to remove the downside of losing maximum energy shield per second and replace it with basically anything else. This will allow for Life Leech to cover both energy shield and life. We no longer need Zealot's Oath, we no longer need to depend on the jewel and use it at all, and this will hopefully solve all of the energy shield issues. If this does not end up being the case, we will have to run a life variation of the build where we get armor base items, not energy shield, and just get as much life as possible. You can get up to about 4,000, 4,500 life without, a Veil of the Night and a Calm's Heart. So the build is going to be a lot less tanky, but it's still very viable. And that's what we used early league to afford, getting this build going since armor items were a lot cheaper than energy shield items. Last but not least are your gloves. For this glove slot, you cannot choose anything else. You have to get the unique Adziri's Acuity molded mitts. This is the most important part of the build. Leech from critical hits being instant is basically make it or break it. This synergizes with, like I mentioned previously, fast metabolism. You need these two in combination. So you get these unique gloves and you either anoint or you get a Megalomaniac that has fast metabolism, and there's your combo. I just so happen to get a Megalomaniac that has some crit chance, and fast metabolism, which allowed me to anoint Lightning Rod for some extra damage. Cooked is actually not better DPS. It might be next patch because we are losing Wild Storms, and Pure Power is going to be a little bit worse than, Wild Storms used to be. But you're going to have to just POB it. I don't think Cooked is worth it because it removes a lot of your energy shield, and I think Lightning Rod is just going to be better. There is an argument to be made. If you're not using Arc in your cast on crit, it could mean that Lightning Rod might not be better. Now, for your other jewels, you also want a Heart of the Well. Really strong jewel. I went with double crit damage bonus. Damage is extra. Doesn't matter which type, you just want extra damage. And then another basically budget lightning rod on a jewel. This goes up to 25% lightning damage with hits to be lucky. Extremely strong, especially if you are using cast on crit arc with sparks. Super strong jewel. That is basically the most important line on this jewel, and then everything else is whatever you can get your hands on. For the rest of the jewels, you basically just want to buy the exact same jewel. Whatever is, the most affordable, the most fitting combo. I went with energy shield, critical damage bonus, and elemental or spell damage. I happen to be able to cap my crit chance pretty comfortably since of the really good wand and focus. But early on, you're probably gonna focus more on crit chance rather than crit damage bonus. Going over the rest of my skill tree, there's honestly nothing really interesting. I have 6 nodes allocated for energy shield, and every single other node on the tree is basically just as much spell damage, cast speed, or critical hit chance and critical damage as possible. You do have to path to blood magics manually. There is, a variation of the build that uses the unique helmet that allocates blood magic. I just didn't like that version, so I chose to path through it, grab some extra jewel sockets. But this is basically your build. I will have my PoE Ninja, which also has the POB in the description, so you can look at all of this. And the last pretty worthwhile mention is your skills. Spark is not the main star of the show. People ask me about what is my spark DPS. I tell them it really does not matter. Your spark is what makes your cast on crit pop, which is where all of your good, gems are. My Rakiatis is here. I usually have double arcs in my cast on crit, and this is what does most of your damage. Also, Arc has a unique feature that if you have a lightning infusion, it deals triple damage. And the way you generate lightning infusions is quite unique. You use ball lightning and lightning warp to teleport on the ball lightning. So you cast your ball lightning and you cast your lightning warp. That teleports you and gives you lightning infusions per each teleport. And you can stack these. You can keep spam casting this on the ground and just stack as much lightning infusions on the ground. Then whenever you are, in a boss fight, you can sigil, cast your arcs, and it will consume these lightning infusions to deal triple damage on your arcs. Really good to stack up your damage before the boss spawns. That's how you get all the one-shots and, craziest DPS. And that basically covers the build. Now, if you are extremely rich and want to try out the temporalis variant of the build, all you have to do is get an amulet with at least 50 spirit, because in order to fit blink and cast on crit, you need 150. Obviously, get as good as a temporalis as you can afford. These get extremely fast the higher up of reduced cooldown you go. Ones that are over corrupted go over easily over a mirror. So get whatever you can afford. A 2-second temporalis is more than enough. You can get up to, down to 0.2 seconds cooldown, which, 5 blinks a second is really fast already. Now, you will also need a little bit of a change in your skill tree. All you're doing is removing the energy shield nodes that you have and replacing those with some cooldown reduction. There is a 21 cooldown reduction above Enchanted Barrier that you can grab, and then you can get a Crimson Assault from Nothing Diamond that allows you to get an extra 3 nodes that give you 25% more cooldown recovery. Also, you have the, I believe, Soul Cores that give you more cooldown recovery on your focus. You can get up to 3 of these if you have a really good focus. And lastly, there's an interlude choice where you are presented with global defenses, attributes, elemental resistance. One of the choices is cooldown recovery, so you can get another 12% there. And with all that combined, you can make a build that is extremely fast at traversing maps. And lastly, I wanted to talk about the build's leveling. It has extremely comfortable pathway straight to tier 15 maps, and then later you can transition into this Bloodmage Spark build about a couple days into the league. I will link a guide of a Chinese player that is super good. This guy is absolutely amazing. He has done a Demon Form, ED Contagion, Bone Storm Witch that he took all the way to tier 15 maps in just 5 hours straight from fresh start. So I will link that in the description if you want to watch that and learn from that guy. And that is what I recommend for leveling. You want to do Demon Form, it's extremely fast, Bone Storm, ED Contagion, obliterates early game maps, and then once you have enough currency on your 4th Ascendancy, or maybe if you're able to do it on your 3rd Ascendancy, you switch to Bloodmage and you transition into Aziri's Acuity, you get fast metabolism, and you start blasting maps with Spark. I also stream every single day and have been streaming every single day for the past 5 years. So if you ever have any questions or just want to come in, say hi and hang out, I will link my Twitch in the description. It's RS Fearless. Come say hi. And yeah, I really appreciate you watching. I'll hopefully see you soon. Peace.
This is not the future I had foreseen.
Oh! The replay!
This is not the future I had foreseen.
How easy. Control time.
What?